The chamber stretched before Junho like an arena designed to make him feel small. 47 species of the Galactic Council filled the curved tiers of seats that rose toward the domed ceiling. Some breathed oxygen like him. Others sat in specialized environment pods filled with methane or ammonia. A few existed as pure energy, contained in crystalline vessels that hummed with soft light. All of them watched him with expressions that ranged from curiosity to outright contempt. Junho Kim stood alone at the center podium. His simple gray diplomatic suit, a stark contrast to the elaborate robes and armor worn by the other representatives. Behind him, projected on a massive holographic display, floated an image of Earth. The blue and green planet rotated slowly, peaceful and unremarkable to those who had seen thousands of worlds. Honorable members of the Council, Junho began, his voice carrying through the translation metrics that converted his words into 47 different languages simultaneously. I stand before you today not to ask for resources or technology. I stand here to request only one thing: peace. A ripple of amusement passed through the chamber. Junho could see it in the way the delegates shifted in their seats, in the subtle movements that translated across species barriers. They found him entertaining. High Chancellor Vexther of the Draven Empire leaned forward in his seat. The reptilian scales caught the light, shifting from deep green to bronze as he moved. His species had controlled 15 star systems for over 2,000 years. They saw themselves as the natural leaders of this sector of space. Ambassador Kim, Vexther's voice dripped with condescension. Your species has been aware of galactic civilization for less than 1 century. You have colonies on only 4 planets. Your fastest ships barely reach half the speed of light. And yet you come here speaking as if you have something to negotiate. Junho met the Chancellor's gaze without flinching. I come here to warn you. The chamber fell silent. Even the energy beings seemed to dim slightly, as if drawing back in surprise. Warn us? Vexther's laugh was a harsh bark. Of what, precisely? Of what will happen if you strike first, Junho said quietly. Humanity does not seek conflict. We want to trade, to learn, to grow alongside the other species of this galaxy. But if you force us to fight, if you attack our worlds, our people, our ships without provocation, then we will respond. And we will not stop until the threat is ended. Another delegate rose from her seat. This one was Cora, a spider-like being from a species known for their philosophical nature. Young ambassador, you must understand how your words sound to us. The Draven Empire alone has a fleet of 5,000 warships. The combined military might of the Council represents over 30,000 vessels. Earth has perhaps 300 ships, most of them designed for system defense. Are you truly threatening this Council? I am not threatening anyone, Junho replied. I am pleading with you. Do not force humanity's hand. We have seen war before, on our own world. We know its cost. We know what it does to people, to civilizations, to the soul of a species. We do not want that again. But we will not allow ourselves to be conquered or destroyed. Hana Lei watched from the observer's gallery, her hands clenched tight on the railing. She had been Junho's advisor for 5 years, had helped him prepare this speech, had argued with him late into the night about whether it would do any good. Now, seeing the casual dismissal on the faces below, she felt her stomach twist. They weren't listening. They heard the words, but they didn't understand the warning beneath them. Vexther stood, his full height impressive, even among the varied species present. Your passion is admirable, Ambassador Kim, but passion does not build star cruisers. It does not power antimatter weapons. Your species builds with steel and concrete. We build with materials your scientists have not even discovered yet. If it came to war, and I assure you it will not, Earth would fall in a matter of days. That is what I am trying to prevent, Junho said. Chancellor Vexter, I know your empire sees Earth's position in space as strategic. I know you want access to our system's resources. I am authorized to negotiate trade agreements, to discuss resource sharing, to find a peaceful solution. But I need you to understand that attacking us first would be a mistake you cannot undo. Is that so? Vexter's tone turned cold. And why should the Draven Empire, or anyone else here, take seriously the threats of a species that has not even mastered faster than light travel? Junho took a breath. This was the moment that would determine everything. Because humans are very good at one thing, Chancellor. We are very good at learning from our mistakes. And our greatest mistake, the one that nearly destroyed our own world, was learning how to wage total war. We learned how to commit every resource, every person, every moment of our existence to the complete destruction of an enemy. We learned how to do it so well that we frightened ourselves. That is why we now beg you for peace. Not because we are weak, because we remember what we become when we have no other choice. The chamber remained quiet. For a moment, Junho thought he might have reached them. Then Vexter began to laugh. Others joined in. Not all of them, but enough. Remarkable, Vexter said. You actually believe this yourself, don't you? Very well, Ambassador Kim. The Council will take your warning under advisement. Junho recognized the dismissal for what it was. The vote came 30 minutes later. The Council, by a vote of 35 to 12, granted the Draven Empire limited annexation rights to the Sol system. The exact terms would be negotiated later, they said. It was all very civilized, very legal under galactic law. One species could petition for the right to annex another, if they could prove the annexation served the greater good of the galaxy. The Draven had argued that Earth's strategic position and resources were too valuable to leave in the hands of such a primitive species. Hana found Junho in the observation deck afterward, staring out at the stars. They didn't listen, she said softly. No, Junho agreed. They didn't. What do we do now? Junho pulled out his communication device and began encoding a message. We prepare. We hope. And we pray that somehow, someway, the Draven reconsider. And if they don't? Junho's fingers moved across the device, typing out a single phrase in a code only Earth's military commanders would understand. Protocol Blackstone. Activate. Then we show them why I was so desperate for them to listen, he said quietly. Send the message, Hana. Tell everyone at home. Tell General Suho. Tell Admiral Doyan. Tell everyone who needs to know. The Draven will strike first. And when they do, we cannot afford mercy. The message transmitted across the galaxy, moving through quantum relay stations, traveling toward Earth at speeds far faster than any ship could manage. By the time it arrived, the Draven fleet was already assembling. The Draven war fleet dropped out of faster than light, travel at the edge of the Sol system like a swarm of metal insects. 200 warships, each one larger than Earth's biggest orbital station, spread out in a formation that had conquered a dozen worlds before. Their hulls gleamed with exotic alloys that could withstand direct hits from nuclear weapons. Their engines burned with contained antimatter, power sources that humanity was still decades away from mastering. On the bridge of the flagship Relentless Claw, War Leader Krath watched the primitive human system spread out before him on the tactical display. He saw Earth, the blue homeworld, Mars with its struggling colonies, the mining operations in the asteroid belt, the gas giant Jupiter with its moons. All of it would belong to the Draven Empire within a week. Open a channel to the human homeworld, Krath ordered. Let us observe the proper formalities. On Earth, Admiral Doyan Park received the transmission in the command center buried deep beneath the mountains of what used to be called Colorado. He was a compact man with gray hair and steady hands. He had spent 40 years in Earth's military, rising through the ranks during the peaceful years when humanity thought they might avoid galactic conflict. Now he stood watching the display, showing 200 enemy warships at the edge of his star system. And his hands remained steady. "This is War Leader Krath of the Draven Empire." The translation came through crisp and clear. "Under the authority granted by the Galactic Council, we claim annexation rights to the Sol system. You have 6 hours to surrender all military vessels and installations. Any resistance will be met with force. These are the only terms. Accept or face destruction." Doyan looked at the officers around him, young men and women who had trained for a war they hoped would never come. "Send the evacuation order," he said calmly. "All civilian stations and colonies are to begin emergency procedures. Get as many people to shelters as possible." "What about the fleet, sir?" asked Commander Nari Choi. "The fleet holds position. We do not fire first. Those were Ambassador Kim's final orders, and we will honor them." On Mars, the colony of New Sol held 40,000 people. They were miners, scientists, families who had left Earth to build a new world. When the evacuation order came, there was no panic. Humanity had drilled for this. Children filed into shelters that had been built into the bedrock of the planet. Adults secured the life support systems and sealed the blast doors. Captain Yuna Song commanded the EDF Indomitable, one of Earth's largest warships. Her vessel hung in space between Earth and Mars, part of a defensive line of 70 ships. She watched the chronometer count down. 6 hours. 5, 4. "They won't actually attack civilians, will they?" her tactical officer asked. "The Galactic Council has laws." Yuna thought about Ambassador Kim's final message. "They will strike first," he had said. "They already voted to let the Draven annex us. Whatever laws they have, they don't apply to us." The 6 hours passed. On Earth, in his facility beneath the mountains, General Suho Chan opened a secure vault. Inside were data drives containing plans that had been developed over 20 years. Plans that had consumed billions of dollars and the work of thousands of people. Plans that the Galactic Council knew nothing about. He inserted the first drive into his terminal and began the activation sequence dot in the Sol system. Krath waited exactly 6 hours and 12 minutes. Then he gave the order. Target the Mars colony. Military installations only, for now. Show them we are serious. The Draven ships fired. Beams of concentrated energy lanced across the void. They struck the defensive satellites around Mars first, vaporizing them in flashes of light. Then they hit the colony itself. The shelter doors were strong. They were built to withstand meteor impacts and radiation. They were not built to withstand weapons designed to crack planets. The beams punched through rock and metal like paper. Entire sections of the colony simply ceased to exist. 15,000 people died in the first volley. Another 5,000 died when the life support systems failed. Yuna watched it happen from her ship, helpless to prevent it. The Draven fleet was still too far away for Earth's weapons to reach effectively. "Return fire," Doyan ordered from Earth. The human fleet opened up with everything they had. Missiles streaked through space. Railguns fired slugs of metal at relativistic speeds. Energy weapons, primitive compared to what the Draven possessed, lanced out toward the enemy. The Draven shields absorbed it all. Their point defense systems shot down the missiles. The metal slugs splashed harmlessly against their hulls. Krath laughed as he watched the human response. "Is that all? Pathetic. Target their orbital defense platforms. Sweep them aside." The battle was brutally one-sided. Earth's orbital weapons platforms, massive installations that had taken years to build, were destroyed one by one. The human ships tried to fight back, tried to close the distance. But the Draven fleet was faster, better armed, better defended. Yuna's ship took a direct hit that tore through the starboard side. "Damage report," she shouted as alarms blared throughout the bridge. "Life support failing on decks 7 through 12. We've lost main engines. Shields at 15%. Get us behind that moon," Yuna ordered. "We need cover." Across the system, the battle raged for 3 hours. By the end, Earth had lost 40 ships. The Draven had lost none. Kraft was preparing the final assault on Earth itself when a message came through from the planet. Minho. Kong sat in a facility that the Galactic Council had never detected. He was a cyber warfare specialist, young and brilliant, the kind of mind that humanity needed in this new age. His fingers flew across holographic keyboards as he transmitted the activation codes. Across the solar system, hidden installations began to wake up. Installations that had been disguised as asteroid mining operations, as scientific research stations, as commercial shipping hubs. "Protocol Blackstone is active," Minho reported. "All units responding. Admiral Jiwoo sends his regards." Doyano allowed himself a small smile. "Tell the fleet to fall back. Let the Draven think they've won." On the Galactic Council station, Junho watched the live feeds with Hana beside him. They saw Mars burning. They saw the human fleet in retreat. They saw the Draven advancing toward Earth itself, confident in their victory. "It's time," Junho said quietly. "Send the message to Jiwoo." Hana nodded and transmitted a single word. "Execute dot in orbit around Jupiter." Hidden in the radiation-soaked magnetosphere, where sensors could barely penetrate, something stirred. Behind the moons of Saturn, concealed by ice and distance, massive structures began to move. In the asteroid belt, what had appeared to be mining ships suddenly transformed, armor plating sliding away to reveal weapons that the galaxy had never seen humanity possess. Admiral Jiwoo Han had spent 20 years building Earth's real military. While the Council watched the few hundred ships that defended Earth openly, Jiwoo had been constructing a fleet in secret. 2,000 warships, built in hidden shipyards, armed with weapons developed by scientists who had studied every scrap of alien technology they could acquire. Humanity had learned. Humanity had adapted. And humanity had prepared. Kroth was reviewing the plans for Earth's occupation when his sensors officer shouted a warning. "Sir, contacts." Multiple contacts appearing throughout the system. "What?" Kraft pulled up the tactical display. His eyes widened. Where there had been empty space moments before, now there were ships. Hundreds of them. Thousands of them. All bearing Earth's insignia. From the bridge of the EDF Titan's Wrath, Admiral Jiwoo Han opened a channel to the Draven fleet. "War Leader Kraft, you were warned. Ambassador Kim told you not to strike first. You should have listened." The hidden fleet opened fire. Weapons that the Draven had never encountered, developed from theories that human scientists had been working on for decades. Quantum entanglement beams that bypassed shields entirely. Kinetic missiles that warped space around them to achieve impossible speeds. Electromagnetic pulses calibrated specifically to overload Draven ship systems. The Draven fleet, so confident moments before, suddenly found itself surrounded and outgunned. Kraft shouted orders, but it was too late. The humans had studied the Draven. They knew their tactics, their weapons, their weaknesses. And they had prepared for exactly this moment. 40 minutes later, 188 Draven ships were gone. Only 12 escaped, fleeing back toward the edge of the system and jumping to faster-than-light speed the moment they could. Jiwoo watched them go. "Let them run," he said. "Let them tell the Draven Empire what happened here. Lieutenant Soyoung, take your stealth ships and follow them. I want to know exactly where they're going." On Earth, General Suho addressed the planet. Citizens of Earth, today the Draven Empire attacked us without provocation. They killed 15,000 of our people on Mars. They destroyed our orbital defenses. They thought we were weak. They were wrong. The war has begun, and we will finish it. The 12 surviving Draven ships jumped through faster-than-light space for 3 days before they reached the first outpost of their empire. War leader Krath sat in his damaged flagship, staring at reports he could barely believe. 200 ships lost. The finest vessels of the Draven fleet, destroyed by a species the Galactic Council had dismissed as primitive. He had watched ships explode without their shields even registering the hits. He had seen weapons that defied everything he knew about physics. Lieutenant Soyoung Park followed them at a distance. Her stealth ship was smaller than most fighters, wrapped in sensor-absorbing materials that made it nearly invisible. She recorded everything, every star system they passed through, every military installation they stopped at, every communication they sent back to the Draven homeworld. All of it was transmitted back to Earth through quantum-entangled communication nodes that allowed instant contact across any distance. On Mars, Colonel Taiyang Wan walked through the ruins of New Sol Colony. His Marines moved carefully through the rubble, searching for survivors. They found them in the deeper shelters, 25,000 people who had made it through the bombardment. But 15,000 had not. Taiyang looked at the bodies being pulled from the collapsed sections and felt something cold settle in his chest. "Colonel," one of his sergeants said quietly, "these people never had a chance." The Draven targeted civilian areas first. Taiyang nodded. "Document everything. Every body, every destroyed building, every piece of evidence. The galaxy is going to see what the Draven Empire does when it thinks no one is watching." Back on Earth, in a facility built into the side of a mountain in what used to be called Switzerland, Dr. Hyan Bei stood before a weapon that had taken 15 years to develop. It looked almost simple, a cylindrical device about the size of a car, covered in cooling systems and quantum processors. But it represented humanity's greatest breakthrough. "The Prometheus device is ready," Hyan said to the holographic image of Admiral Ji Woo. "We can deploy it whenever you give the order." "Explain it to me one more time," Ji Woo said. "In simple terms." Hyan smiled. She was used to explaining complex physics to military officers. Every ship in the galaxy uses some form of energy shielding. Those shields work by deflecting or absorbing energy that hits them. But they all operate on the same basic principle. They interact with matter and energy in normal space. The Prometheus device uses quantum entanglement to connect a particle on our ship with a particle on the target ship. When we fire the device, we don't send energy through space. We simply change the state of the entangled particles, and that change happens simultaneously inside the target ship. Their shields never register the attack because nothing actually crosses the barrier. "And you're certain it works?" "We've tested it on derelict ships, on asteroids, on every target we could find." "It works, Admiral. The Draven Empire's shields are useless against it." Ji Woo looked at the weapon with something like respect and fear. "How many do we have?" 200 devices spread across our fleet. Each one can fire every 30 seconds. And we're building more. While the Draven Empire scrambled to understand what had happened, Earth's fleet mobilized. Ji Woo had divided his forces into 3 battle groups. The first would defend the Sol system. The second would secure the surrounding star systems to prevent any surprise attacks. The third, the largest group of 800 ships, would take the war to the Draven. Chancellor Hana Lee, who had been promoted to Earth's Security Council after the attack, stood in the war room, watching the fleet prepare. "Are we really doing this?" she asked General Suho. "Are we really going to invade the Draven Empire?" They killed 15,000 of our people, Suho said flatly. They attacked civilian targets first. They thought we would surrender, that we would accept annexation quietly. We will not. We cannot. If we allow this to go unpunished, every species in the galaxy will think they can do the same. But how far do we take it? Suho turned to face her. As far as we need to, until the Draven Empire no longer poses a threat to humanity. Until every species in this galaxy understands that attacking us first is not an option they can afford. The first target was a Draven military station in a system 3 weeks from Earth. Intelligence from Soyang's reconnaissance showed that it held a fleet of 75 warships and served as a supply depot for the entire sector. Captain Yuna Song, her ship repaired and upgraded, led the assault. The Draven expected another fleet like the one they had faced before, large but manageable. What arrived was something else entirely. The human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. Before the Draven could even raise their shields, the Prometheus devices fired. Yuna watched on her tactical display as enemy ships simply stopped working. Their engines died. Their weapons went offline. Their life support failed. The quantum entanglement weapons didn't destroy the ships. They disabled them completely. Boarding parties moved in, securing the vessels and taking the crews prisoner. Minimal casualties, Yuna reported to Admiral Jiwoo. We've captured 71 intact warships and the entire station. Draven casualties are approximately 200. Our casualties are 0. The second target was harder. A colony world called Drax, home to 8 million Draven civilians and a major shipyard complex. Jiwoo made the decision that would define the war. We do not target civilians. I don't care what they did to Mars. We are better than that. Broadcast a warning. Give them time to evacuate the shipyards. Then we destroy only the military installations. The message went out in Draven language. This is Admiral Jiwoo Han of the Earth Defense Force. We are attacking the military shipyards in orbit of your world. All civilian personnel have 6 hours to evacuate. We will not target population centers. We will not target civilian ships. But the shipyards will be destroyed. This is your only warning. The Draven authorities thought it was a trick at first. But when the 6 hours passed and human ships began systematically demolishing the orbital shipyards while carefully avoiding civilian areas, they realized these humans meant what they said. News spread through the Draven Empire, spread through the entire Galactic Council. The humans were not conquering or enslaving. They were methodically destroying military capability while sparing civilians. It was a kind of warfare the galaxy had not seen in centuries. Chancellor Vexter watched the reports from his capital world and felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. Real, genuine fear. In 3 months, the humans had destroyed or captured 60% of the Draven military. They had done it with minimal casualties on both sides, and they showed no signs of stopping. He called an emergency session of his war council. How is this possible? How can a species we defeated in our first engagement now be destroying our empire? His intelligence chief, a scarred veteran named Krex, pulled up the data. Our initial assessment was wrong, Chancellor. The humans we fought at Earth with their defense force meant only to delay and absorb the first attack. Their real military was hidden throughout their system, built in secret over decades. They studied us, learned from every species in the Council, and developed countermeasures to our technology. Then we developed countermeasures to theirs. We're trying, sir, but they're adapting faster than we can respond. Every time we develop a new tactic, they counter it within days. It's like they can predict our moves. What Krex didn't know was that Minho Kong and his cyber warfare team had cracked the Draven military communication codes. Every order, every strategy session, every tactical plan was being intercepted and analyzed by human artificial intelligence. Earth knew what the Draven would do before they did it. The war ground on. 4 months. 5 months. 6 months. The Draven Empire, which had stood for 2,000 years, was being systematically dismantled by a species that had barely reached the stars. On the Galactic Council station, Junho received visitors, representatives from species that had voted to allow the Draven annexation. They came with apologies, with offers of mediation, with pleas for mercy. Ambassador Kim, said Mediator Turval, a species known for their diplomatic skills. Surely Earth has made its point. The Draven Empire is defeated. Their military is broken. Is it not time to negotiate peace? Junho looked at the being who had voted against humanity. Did you ask the Draven to negotiate peace when they were bombarding our colony on Mars? Did you suggest mercy when they were killing our civilians? The Council made a mistake. We see that now. You made a choice, Junho corrected. You chose to believe we were weak because we asked for peace. You chose to give the Draven permission to attack us. Now you want us to stop because you're afraid we won't? We will stop, Mediator, when the threat is ended, not before. In the Draven capital, Vexther made a decision. He opened a communication channel to Earth and spoke words he never imagined he would say. I wish to discuss terms of surrender. Admiral Doyan received the message and forwarded it to the Security Council. What should we tell him? Hana looked at the data. 15,000 dead on Mars. Thousands more wounded. An entire colony destroyed. She thought about mercy, about being better than your enemies. Then she thought about making sure this never happened again. Tell him that surrender is not the same as retreat, she said. Tell him he will face our terms. And tell him that we will be very specific about what those terms include. The terms of surrender arrived at the Draven capital 3 days after Vexther's request. They were not gentle. Earth demanded complete disarmament of all Draven military forces, except for system defense ships. They demanded war crime trials for every officer involved in the attack on Mars. They demanded reparations for the families of those killed. And they demanded something the Draven had never given any conquered species: the right to rebuild under their own government, free from occupation. They're not going to enslave us? Krex asked, reading the terms with disbelief. Vexther stared at the document. No, they're going to do something worse. They're going to make us live with what we've done. They're going to let us rebuild, knowing that the entire galaxy watched us lose to a species we called primitive. On Earth, Captain Narration prepared her broadcast. She commanded the Psychological Operations Division, a unit that most people didn't even know existed. Her job was to shape perception, to control the narrative of the war. She had spent months compiling footage of Draven atrocities, interviews with survivors, evidence of war crimes. Are you sure about this? General Suho asked her. Once we release this to the galactic networks, there's no taking it back. Myray looked at the images on her screen. Bodies pulled from the ruins of New Sol. Children who had lost parents. Burn patterns that showed the Draven had deliberately targeted civilian shelters. The galaxy needs to see what they voted to allow. They need to understand that their decision had consequences. The broadcast went out on every channel that humanity could access. It showed the attack on Mars in brutal detail. It showed the Draven war leader Kroth laughing as he gave the order to fire on civilian targets. It showed the aftermath, the rescue workers pulling bodies from rubble, the medical facilities overwhelmed with wounded. But it also showed something else. It showed human Marines taking Draven prisoners and treating their wounds. It showed Earth ships evacuating Draven civilians from military targets before attacking. It showed Admiral Ji Woo rejecting suggestions to bombard Draven cities in retaliation. The message was clear. Look at what they did. Look at how we responded. This is the difference. The galactic reaction was immediate and powerful. Species that had supported the Draven suddenly found themselves facing questions from their own populations. Why had they voted to allow the annexation? Why had they stood by while civilians were murdered? Protests erupted on dozens of worlds. Governments fell. The Galactic Council itself faced a crisis of legitimacy. JUNHO watched it all from the council station. Hannah stood beside him, now officially Earth's ambassador to the council. We've turned the entire galaxy against the Draven, she said. Some of the species that voted for annexation are facing revolution. Good, Junho said simply. They should face consequences for their choices, just like the Draven are facing consequences for theirs. Mediator Turval came to them again, more desperate this time. Ambassador Kim, Ambassador Lee, I beg you to consider a ceasefire. The Draven have agreed to your terms. They will disarm. They will pay reparations. They will surrender War Leader Krath and the others for trial. What more do you want? Hannah pulled up a holographic display. It showed star charts of the region surrounding Earth. We want insurance, Mediator. The Draven Empire isn't the only threat out here. You showed us that when 35 species voted to let them attack us. We need to make sure that never happens again. What are you proposing? A new defensive pact? Any species that signs agrees to one simple rule: never strike first. If you are attacked without provocation, all signatories will come to your defense. But if you attack another species first, all signatories will respond against you. Turval considered this. You're trying to change the entire structure of galactic military policy. Yes, John Ho said. We are, because the current system allowed what happened to us. It needs to change. On the Draven Ho world, Vexther stood trial. Not in a Draven court, and not in a human one. The trial was held by the Galactic Council itself, with judges drawn from neutral species. The evidence was overwhelming. Recordings of Krath's orders. Testimony from survivors. Sensor logs showing that the Draven had deliberately targeted civilian areas. Vexther as defense argued that he was following galactic law, that the Council had voted to allow the annexation. The prosecution, led by a human lawyer named Jiho Min, had a simple response. The Council voted to allow annexation, Jiho said. They did not vote to allow mass murder. They did not vote to allow war crimes. Chancellor Vexther had choices at every step. He chose to attack civilians. He chose to ignore calls for negotiation. He chose to continue the attack even after it was clear that humanity would resist. These were his choices, and now he must face the consequences. The verdict came after 3 weeks of testimony. Guilty on all counts. Vexther was stripped of his titles and sentenced to life imprisonment. War Leader Krath and 73 other officers faced similar judgments, but the trials did something more important than punish the guilty. They established a precedent. They showed the galaxy that attacking civilians, even under the cover of legal annexation, would be treated as a war crime. They showed that even the powerful could be held accountable. Admiral Ji Woo arrived at the Draven Ho world with a fleet of 200 ships. The Draven military, what remained of it, had already disarmed as agreed. Ji Woo's ships took up position in orbit, their weapons pointed down at the planet. For 3 days, they simply waited. On the 4th day, Ji Woo broadcast a message to the Draven people. I am Admiral Ji Woo Han of Earth. My fleet could destroy this world. Our weapons could crack your planet like an egg. But we won't. Do you know why? Because we are not conquerors. We are not here to enslave you or rule over you. We are here to make sure you never threaten us again. Your military is dismantled. Your leaders are imprisoned. You will pay reparations for the people you killed, but your government remains yours. Your world remains yours. Rebuild it. Make it better than it was. And remember that the species you called primitive showed you more mercy than you showed us. The ships remained in orbit for 6 months, monitoring the Draven compliance with the surrender terms. Then slowly they withdrew. Not all the way. Earth maintained a military presence in the region. But they did not occupy. They did not rule. They simply watched Hana return to the council with a document that she had spent months preparing. The First Strike Accord. It was simple, just 3 pages of text that laid out the basic principle. No signatory would attack another species without provocation, and any species that did would face unified response from all others. Who would enforce this? Asked one of the council delegates. Who would decide what constitutes provocation? A neutral arbitration board, Hana explained, made up of representatives from all signatory species. If there's a dispute, they investigate and make a determination. If they find that a species was attacked without provocation, all signatories commit to defending them. If they find that a species struck first, all signatories commit to stopping them. And if a species refuses to sign, then they're on their own. No mutual defense. No support. They can do what they want, but they can't expect help when someone does it to them. The debate raged for weeks. Some species saw it as humanity trying to impose its will on the galaxy. Others saw it as a reasonable response to the chaos that had allowed the Draven attack. The smaller species, the ones who had no powerful militaries, saw it as protection. Dr. Hyun Bae made a gesture that surprised many. She announced that Earth would share the Prometheus device technology with any species that signed the accord. Not the weapons themselves, but the defensive applications of quantum entanglement. Ways to protect against similar weapons. Ways to improve shields and communications. Why would you do this? Asked a delegate from a species that had voted against humanity. Why give your enemies your technology? Hyun smiled. Because we don't want enemies. We want partners. We want a galaxy where war is the last resort, not the first choice. And that means sharing knowledge, building trust, creating systems where everyone benefits from peace. One by one, species began to sign. The smaller ones first, eager for protection. Then some of the middle-sized powers, seeing the advantage. Finally, some of the larger species, recognizing that the galaxy was changing, and they could either change with it or be left behind. 6 months after the Draven surrender, 22 species had signed the First Strike Accord. It wasn't the whole galaxy, but it was a start. Junho stood in the council chamber where he had first delivered his warning. The chamber looked the same, but everything felt different. The delegates who had laughed at him now listened when he spoke. The species that had dismissed humanity now sought their alliance. We didn't want this, Junho said to the assembled council. We didn't want to be a military power. We didn't want to fight a war. We wanted to explore, to learn, to build. But you forced our hand. You voted to let the Draven attack us. You stood by while our people died. And now we're here, stronger than you expected, but carrying losses we can never recover. I hope you've learned from this. I hope you understand now why we begged you for peace. 18 months after the war ended, Junho Kim stood in a very different place than where his journey had begun. He was no longer just an ambassador. The people of Earth had elected him chancellor, the leader of their unified government. It was a position he had never wanted, but one he accepted because someone needed to guide humanity through what came next. The council chamber had changed too. Where once 47 species had sat in judgment of humanity, now 63 species gathered. 16 new members had joined, smaller civilizations that had been waiting for the political climate to shift. They had watched what happened with the Draven. They had seen that the old order could be challenged. Unisong stood at the podium where Junho had once delivered his warning. She was no longer just a ship captain. Now she represented Earth as one of 5 human council members. The rules had changed. No species could have just one voice anymore. Everyone got 5 representatives to prevent any single individual from wielding too much power. The Joint Defense Initiative is ready for its first deployment, Yuna announced to the Council. 40 species have contributed ships and personnel. We have a combined fleet of 800 vessels, drawn from across the galaxy. This fleet will respond to any act of aggression against a signatory of the First Strike Accord, a delegate from a species called the Tarn, jellyfish-like beings who communicated through bioluminescence. Asked a question through the translation metrics. Who commands this fleet? Who decides when and how it deploys? Command rotates every 6 months among the participating species, Yuna explained. Right now, Admiral Ji Wuhan of Earth holds the position. In 6 months, it will pass to Fleet Commander Vex of the Tarn Collective, then to War Master Crix of the Vogan Alliance. Everyone shares the responsibility. Everyone shares the authority. On Mars, the colony of New Sol had been rebuilt. It looked different now. The buildings were stronger, built into the bedrock of the planet rather than on top of it. The population had grown to 60,000, more than before the attack. People from across Earth had volunteered to come here, to show that humanity would not be driven away by violence. A memorial stood at the center of the colony. 15,000 names carved into black stone. Above them, a simple message in multiple languages. They struck first. We did not stop. We will not forget. Colonel Taiyang Wan, now General Wan, oversaw the memorial's dedication ceremony. Families of the dead had come from across the solar system. Some wept. Others stood in silence. All of them remembered. We build this memorial not for revenge, Taiyang said to the gathered crowd. We build it as a reminder of what happens when diplomacy fails, a reminder of the cost of war, and a reminder that we survived, we rebuilt, and we became stronger. Dr. Haiyan Bei's laboratory had expanded into a full research campus. Scientists from 27 different species worked here now, sharing knowledge that had been kept secret for generations. The Interspecies Research Initiative, they called it. The goal was simple: develop technology for defense, for exploration, for improving life across the galaxy. We've made breakthrough in faster-than-light communication, Haiyan explained to a group of visiting dignitaries. Using quantum entanglement principles that Earth developed during the war. Soon, any species with the right equipment will be able to communicate instantly across any distance. No more weeks waiting for messages to travel between stars. One of the dignitaries, a being made of crystalline energy, asked, "You are sharing this freely? You could charge enormous sums for such technology." Haiyan smiled. We could. But what good is communication technology if only the rich can afford it? We want to bring the galaxy closer together, not divide it further. The Draven Empire still existed, but it looked nothing like it had before. Their military was limited to system defense forces, small ships that could protect against pirates, but couldn't threaten neighbors. Their economy had shifted from military production to trade and manufacturing. The younger generation of Draven had grown up knowing that their leaders had committed terrible crimes and paid terrible prices. On the Draven homeworld, in a school where children learned about galactic history, a teacher explained the war to her students. Our leaders believed that might made right, she said. They believed that because we were stronger, we could take what we wanted. The humans taught us that there are different kinds of strength. The strength to show mercy when you could destroy. The strength to rebuild instead of seeking revenge. the strength to turn enemies into partners. A young driving student raised his hand. "Teacher, why did the humans spare us? After what we did to them?" The teacher considered the question. Because they were trying to change the galaxy, not just win a war. If they had destroyed us, they would have been no different than what they claimed we were. By sparing us, by helping us rebuild, they showed every species watching that there was a better way. Hannah Lee had become Earth's chief diplomat, traveling between worlds and negotiating treaties that would have been impossible before the war. She stood now on a world called Terra, home to a species that had voted against humanity in that first council session. They had invited her here to apologize. "We were wrong about your people," the Terran leader said. "We believed the propaganda. We believed you were aggressive because you came from a world of conflict. We didn't understand that you were trying to escape that conflict, not spread it." "You weren't alone," Hannah replied. "Most of the galaxy believed the same thing. That's why we had to show you differently. Words weren't enough. And now, what does Earth want from us?" Hannah pulled out a datapad with the first strike accord displayed on it. "We want you to join us. We want to build a galaxy where no species has to face what we faced, where diplomacy is the first choice, not the last, where attacking civilians is met with universal condemnation. We want partners, not subjects." The Terran leader signed the accord that day. 3 more species signed within the month. The movement was growing. Minho Kong, the cyber warfare specialist who had helped crack Draven codes during the war, now ran a completely different kind of operation. The Galactic Information Network, a project to create secure communication channels that any species could use. No more secrets. No more hidden fleets preparing surprise attacks. Everything military was tracked and monitored by neutral observers. Some species complained, Minho said during an interview with a galactic news service. "They said we were spying on them. But we're not hiding what we're doing. Every species with ships in space is to see the same information we see. If someone builds a fleet, everyone knows about it. That makes it harder to prepare secret invasions. Don't you think some privacy is important?" "Absolutely. Personal privacy, commercial privacy, all of that is protected. But military buildups? Those affect everyone. They should be public knowledge." Admiral Ji Woo stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching a joint training exercise between Earthships and vessels from 6 other species. They moved in coordinated formations, learning to work together, learning each other's tactics and capabilities. It was messy. Different species had different ways of doing things. But it was working. "Admiral," his communication officer said, "we're receiving a distress call from the Coven system. A pirate fleet is attacking their colony." Ji Wo checked the readiness status of the Joint Defense Fleet. Ships from 11 different species, all under his command for the next 4 months. "Signal the fleet. We respond. All ships prepare for jump to faster than light speed." Within an hour, the joint fleet dropped into the Coven system. The pirates, expecting local defense forces, suddenly faced an armada. They surrendered without firing a shot. The Chivan people, a small species with limited military capability, watched as ships from across the galaxy came to their aid. "This is what we're building," Ji Woo said later in his report to the Council. "A galaxy where the strong protect the weak instead of preying on them. Where an attack on one is treated as an attack on all. It's not perfect yet. We still have species that refuse to join. We still have conflicts. But we're making progress." Chancellor Jun-Ho Kim, in his office on Earth, reviewed the latest reports. 40 species in the First Strike Accord. The Joint Defense Initiative responding to threats across 3 sectors of space. Trade increasing between former enemies. New technologies being shared freely. It was everything he had hoped for when he first stood before the Council. But there were still challenges. 23 species had not signed the accord. Some because they genuinely preferred independence. Others because they resented humanity's rise to power. There were rumors of new military buildups in distant sectors. Whispers of species planning to test the Accord's resolve. Hana came into his office with the latest intelligence. The Kresh Dominion is building a fleet, she said. 500 ships in the last year. They haven't signed the accord, and they're making aggressive statements about their neighbors. Junho looked at the reports. The Kresh were a powerful species, one of the few that could potentially challenge the combined strength of the Accord members. Open a communication channel. I'll speak to their leader directly. The conversation happened over faster-than-light communication. The Kresh Dominator, a being that looked like a mass of tentacles and sensory organs, appeared on the holographic display. Chancellor Kim, the Dominator said, I wondered when you would contact us. I'm hearing concerning reports about your military buildup, Juno said. 500 new ships is significant. Your neighbors are worried. Are you threatening us? I'm asking about your intentions. The First Strike Accord exists to prevent misunderstandings from turning into wars. If you have legitimate security concerns, we can discuss them. If you're planning aggression, I need to know now. The Dominator was quiet for a long moment. Your species fascinates me, Chancellor. You had the power to conquer after defeating the Draven. You could have built an empire. Instead, you built an alliance. We learned something a long time ago, Juno said. Empires fall. Partnerships last. What are your intentions? The Kresh Dominion has enemies. Species that raided our borders for centuries while the Council did nothing. We build ships to protect ourselves. Then join the Accord. If you're attacked without provocation, every signatory will defend you. You won't need 500 ships when you have the backing of 40 species. And if we don't want to join, then you're on your own. Build your fleet. Defend yourself. But understand that if you use that fleet to attack first, you'll face all of us. Not as conquerors, but as defenders of the peace we're trying to build. 2 months later, the Kresh Dominion signed the First Strike Accord. Their 500 ships became part of the Joint Defense Initiative. Their enemies, seeing the shift in power, opened negotiations instead of launching raids. Yuna stood in the council chamber where it had all started. She thought about Captain Junho Kim, standing alone, horning the galaxy. Thought about Admiral Doyun, holding the defense of Earth while outnumbered. Thought about the 15,000 dead on Mars. Thought about how close they had come to being destroyed. We were lucky, she said to a young diplomatic aide. If the Draven had been smarter, if they had been more careful, they might have won. We weren't stronger than them. We were just better prepared. Do you think we'll have to fight again? The aide asked. Yuna looked at the display showing the member species of the Accord. 40 now. Soon to be 42. Growing every month. Maybe. Probably. There are always species that think they can win, that think the old ways are better. But each time we prove them wrong, more species join us. Eventually, the idea of striking first will be so unthinkable that wars like this become impossible. You really believe that? I have to. Otherwise, what was the point? General Suho retired from active military service and became an instructor at the new Galactic Defense Academy. Students from 30 species learned strategy and tactics from teachers representing 15 different militaries. They learned about the war with the Draven. They learned about the cost of aggression and the value of R.